Chapter 50 Prince Jing. The crowd in the building had long been dumbfounded and speechless. They had seen fights before, but they had never seen a son of a great clan personally fight, and even if someone was lucky enough to have seen such a rare scene, they probably had never seen such an open and honest play of 2 against 1. Even Tu Jing was also a little depressed, although he was a lot weaker than the Guo family's expert, but the young master made this play, but let himself also lose face. Suddenly, his mind stirred, thinking of the seemingly comical scene from earlier. The young master was actually able to see such a complicated situation, and that punch looked like hocus pocus, but in fact the power and angle were accurate to a terrifying degree. The gaze he then looked at Fan Xian with, at this point, had a hint more of awe and marvel. Escorted by the eyes of the crowd, Fan and his entourage were about to go downstairs, when an elegant seat in the corner of the building was pushed open, and a few people pushed the door and walked out, thinking that they had come out to watch the action after hearing the argument outside, and one of them, full of aristocratic air and magnificently dressed, saw Fan Ruorua, and his eyes brightened slightly, and he stepped forward, bowing, and said, "Ruorua's younger sister has the leisure to go out of the mansion today, and that's a rare sight. The person who came has a handsome face, thick eyebrows and clear eyes, nose and lips thin, looks really a table of talent." Fan Ruorua was slightly shocked and saluted. "The son of the world is actually here as well." Then he hurriedly introduced Fan Xian to the other party. Fan Xian did not expect that this was the son of the king of Jing County's family, who had made good friends with his own family and exchanged pleasantries. The king of County Jing and the Fan family had always been good friends, so he knew quite a bit about each other's families, and as soon as Fan Ruorua introduced him, the son of the king of County King immediately guessed Fan Xian's identity, and was not slightly surprised. He saw that Fan Xian's speech was neither humble nor overbearing, and he had an indescribable confidence in his bones, but the smile on his face was so warm and friendly that he couldn't help but feel very comfortable. At this time, the palace compiler Guobaokuan also came over to give the sun to greet, and there are idle people will Guofan 2 previous skirmishes in the ears of the sun said again. After hearing this, Shitzi was greatly interested and asked Fan Xian, "Brother seems to have a problem with readers." "Everyone can read, everyone is a reader." Fan Xian bowed to Shitzi and replied. In his mind, there was no concept of class division in this era, nor did he think that by reading some of the 8 stocks, he had become a generation that transcended the mundane stream of commerce and industry. "I also read books, so how dare I have an opinion on the readers? Just." He smiled and continued, "I have a very good opinion of the so-called talent only." Once this remark was made, the people in the building all showed a curious look, wanting to see what this high family son who makes black fists would have to say freshly. Even the county king's son was extremely interested in asking for advice. "Why does brother look down on the so-called talented people?" The county king's son was quite polite, but since Fan Xian hadn't formally recognized his ancestor, he had no choice but to refer to him as brother without mentioning the rest of the family, or at least without mentioning his last name, on this occasion. Fan Xian understood the rules of this society and didn't get angry in the slightest, explaining with a smile, "The reason why I have a problem with talented people is because I feel that today's culture is so wrong. And it seems that as long as a scholar is willing to go to a greenhouse more often, he will become a talented person. This talented person's flavor, I'm afraid that there is too much lipstick flavor and too little bookishness, which is not beneficial to the country, but allows those women to earn benefits." Although this word is a little sour, but not how poisonous, but some like in a joke. County King's son snorted, the people in the restaurant also snorted. This Tsubaki matter is considered to be unveiled. After all, in other people's eyes, this young master of the Fan family, who came out from nowhere, seemed to have a few friendships with the prince of the county king, and Guobaokuan's side, who seemed to be no match for Fan Xian in a fight, and who was no match for him in a scolding fight, had to call it quits with a grudge. The prince of Jing County invited Fan Xian to come in for a drink. Fan Xian excused himself to go back to his house and politely declined, only to book a live appointment for the day after tomorrow, and the Fan family and their party went down to the restaurant. When they left the restaurant and were about to board the carriage, the scholar named Hizonwei rushed down, looked into Fan Xian's eyes, and said, "Thank you sincerely." "What are you thanking me for?" Fan Xian asked with a smile. Hizonwei smiled and replied, "I've always been a self-proclaimed scorner of the powerful and noble, and boasted about it, but today, Your Excellency pointed it out, and only then did I realize that I was merely enjoying the feeling, and that I still can't get out of those cliches in my bones." Fan Xian frowned slightly, feeling that this person's posture had changed a little too quickly. Although he didn't like this seemingly straightforward scholar, after all, the cause of the conflict was actually the other party fighting for himself as the author of the Dream of Red Mansions, so he smiled and explained, "Everyone has a cowardly part in their body, but they often need to have certain things to force this part out, which is the so-called small part underneath the Confucian robe. This is the so-called Confucian robe under the small. Today and the following is also nonsense. I hope brother do not take offense." The small under the Confucian robe? Hizonwei appeared to be thinking, awakened, and again deeply saluted Fan Ruoro beside Fan Xian before turning around without looking back and going upstairs. Fan Xian glimpsed that this black-skinned scholar's face seemed to be a bit red, and realized what was going on, and looked at his sister beside him with a face full of derision, which knew that Fan Ruoro's face was calm and unperturbed, as if that black-faced scholar hadn't come at all just now. Knowing that Hizonwei is only unrequited love, Fan Xian does not have much sympathy. In his plan, his sister will marry a husband, do not necessarily have to enter the marquee to worship the minister, but must be their own sister like to do. After Fan Xian left, Guo Baokuan and Hizonwei's table of literati had no light on their faces and also left the building. The third floor of Yishiju began to gradually return to calm, except that the guests at the various tables were still discussing the young master of the Fan family from earlier, all saying that they had never heard of such a figure in the Sananbo family, and all speculating whether he was Miss Fan's cousin or what. A staff member said after a little deliberation that Hizonwei is Zhang Wenxiang's student, and he is sure to win the imperial examination next year. I wonder how this person is. Prince Jing shook his head. This Hizonwei's talent is there, but his endowment is. He actually heard the conversation outside in the compartment earlier, and at this time, thinking of the comment he heard about the bones of the wind, he laughed. The bones of the wind are really worse. The staffer also laughed on the side, that Lord Fan's illegitimate son that he has been hiding for more than 10 years is really interesting. Prince Jing patted the fan in his hand, and was about to praise it, when he suddenly thought of Fan Xian's previous words of ridicule, and hurriedly put the fan back on the table, and laughed. That Guo Baokuan relies on his father's power at home, and he himself is good friends with the crown prince, so he doesn't put the Fan family in his eyes, and these mediocre and dull people can actually live until now. It's really not easy.